And this is Amária Sweet with HeartMind Expressions, and I've got Alex and Sue. We've had some really cool questions that have been very interesting. Thank you so much, Michael and Ian, for joining in and helping us with some of these amazing thoughts and questions. So we actually wanted to kind of start first by talking about the Florida marquee video that was talking about Amazon and Nashville. Actually, do you want to kind of go on that, Alex?
Yeah. Okay. So, this video that was sent to me actually on Facebook. The gentleman who makes these videos is a former intelligence, and so when he's talking about all the different things that are happening, he likes to create coordination between events and kind of create kind of a chronological story that has to do with it. So what he was able to do yesterday, because there was two videos that were kind of connected, was he was able to connect the incident that happened in Nashville to a military facility located in, I believe it's Nashville International over there.
Yeah, I think
and then also into a rural part of Tennessee. I forgot the name of the town. I think it's Marysville or something like that, where they actually had 3 high-ranking members of the Space Force all die in a private private flight. We're talking 2 officers and 1 enlisted, and all 3 of them were very, very high ranking.
Yeah, now, I think it was an E6, colonel, and then there was an E3 captain, and then I'm not sure what the other guy was.
I think so, yeah.
Excuse me, 03 and 06, not E3. That's enlisted.
Yeah, that's enlisted, yeah. And what happened was that he was able to draw a straight line between all 3 of these incidents. Now, he made a video today, and he was able to make that line even longer. It went all the way into Brazil.
Wow.
Where the United States recently was able to purchase land from Brazil to develop a base in Brazil, which is coincidentally Space Force as well. And it's the same size and shape and dimensions of the Pentagon in the DC area.
And he was talking about it being like some sort of a directed energy weapon that could be fired at different points in time, but could also be calibrated to hit at the same time somehow.
It was so it's a laser, and it's called a time-space laser. I think it's called time-space laser. So you can deal. So as we know with lasers, normally what happens is that you point the laser at like a mirror, and it refracts off of it.
Right.
This particular new laser that has recently been discovered refracts differently because it can be 2 points at the same time, or it can be at 2 points at 2 different points in time, making it very, very difficult to actually predict everything.
Which makes me think Solar Warden, not Space Force, it must be doing something with NASA, I'm wondering. I mean, it's just kind of my own thinking out loud. You know, I'm wondering if the SSP is doing anything, or if maybe it's just NASA and the deep state trying to do stuff to keep us from getting into that disclosure.
Well, I know a lot of people are actually teaming up now. It's like the good guys are constantly now teaming up. They kind of work in their own factional centers and areas in their own cubbies, as to put it, and did whatever the job, and the bad guys did the same thing. So now we're at the home stretch of this game here. So now each faction, each part is actually teaming up to do whatever last kabang they could possibly do and need to be done. So a lot of people just doing things together now. So I think it's both.
The name of the crash site, the town that I was located, is McMahonville, Tennessee.
Oh yes,
McMahonville, Tennessee. So one of the things that he brought up, and this actually kind of makes sense to a lot of the things that have been kind of going on right now, is this is all training for the general populace for an invasion of some sort.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So one of the things that happened in that area, there is a, so when it comes to air travel, you have your air traffic controllers basically conducting this wonderful air opera in the sky, with making sure all these planes don't crash into each other. Well, Memphis is the main hub for that particular area, and what happened was that when this explosion, or as other people have been saying, possibly even an EMP went off.
Right. Yeah, I heard it was like an EMP, actually. Yeah.
What happened was the Memphis local air traffic controller radar system over there went blind.
Ooh.
So for an hour, and this actually was after the incident. The incident happened at 2:30 in Nashville. Memphis went blind around 2:00 p.m. So from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., they were completely blind. None of the instruments that used the radar would work.
Right.
So that they grounded everything that was in that area so that they wouldn't accidentally crash into each other or go off course.
Well, yeah.
And going back to Space Force with the SSB, from what I understand, the SSB is actually meant to promote disclosure in a public setting.
Right.
So I think like all of these things that we're seeing, these almost space age technologies, are kind of like the Space Force and the White Hat's ability to drag all these things out of the dark projects and into the public scenery in a very controlled manner. Not to like spook anybody, but it was actually kind of good that it happened in Nashville of all places. I know that sounds terrible to say, but Nashville, in that particular area, there's a lot of brick building, and actually downtown Nashville was designed to deal with a nuclear blast during the 50s. And so all these areas were completely hardened when it came to EMP.
Yeah. That's a really good observation. That's cool. Well, and another observation, though, since we're thinking about, possibilities that could be connected, Ian had asked, Nashville is only 2 hours away from Chattanooga, the explosion. Would that be a possible distraction from the Tiffany Dover mystery? I think that was a really good question that he posed.
I think these are two parallel things, not coincidentally happening in the Tennessee area.
Right.
Why all these things are happening over there is beyond me, but I find it interesting that all these things are happening within a similar radius.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we have.
I mean, I like your explosion hardened scenario too. That's interesting.
Well, I think when it came to that, it would just prepare people for what could potentially happen without actually causing too much harm. I mean, yes, we have infrastructure issues, but besides that, I haven't heard anybody actually dying from it. I've heard injuries, but no one actually dying, which is fantastic for what could potentially would have happened.
Well, and thinking of, how, there's things that are staged, red flags or false flags. And I know that we have the White Hats also doing false flags, because we've got to, if you know everything, we can't win the war. Like with Tiffany Dover, thinking about that, like, what if that would also be something staged to where, we have to let the shoplifter leave the store, right, to catch them. So that could be possibly something. Maybe that would be a person that might have been staged with it, I'm wondering. Or do you think that would be legit? Because some people are saying, she got up and she was fine later with the, the mainstream stuff.
I think it's a shock and awe campaign, and I don't know who exactly did that campaign, but I think it's shock and awe, because what it's trying to do is show you what happens when you take one of these shots. And we're seeing massive levels of anaphylactic reactions from it. I think with the preliminary data we have so far, 3% of people are actually getting some type of allergic reaction to it.
So it's maybe try to normalize it to the population, like, oh, this might happen, but you'll be okay. Like, do you think maybe that? Okay.
That may be a scenario, but the other one might be it scares people so they're not taking it. And then what happens?
Well, I wouldn't want to take it anyway. You're not jabbing me with a freaking needle.
Yeah. Well, and then you also consider the fact that over 70% of people are not cooperating with contact tracers as well.
Yeah.
We're this, I think, in the long term is providing an opportunity for people to really embrace their sovereignty and their liberty and standing against these monolithic structures that we have here.
Giving people a chance to think twice, because a lot of people were very almost hell-bent and waiting for the shots to be available. There were so many people acting like we just can't wait. We just absolutely can't wait for it to show up. And they, now that some of it's here, there has been people that were just ready to jump in on it without even, doing some research and thinking about what are the consequences. Right. A lot of people weren't worried about the consequences. They figured because they trust big pharma for some reason or something, they trust the big guys that, hey, they're not going to hurt us. They're not here to kill us. They're not here to do anything. They're here to help us. And right there, that's where you're going to run into some problems. They unfortunately are there to make money. That's it.
Yeah. Well, at least a lot of nurses that I've talked with, thank God, and one of them's my sister, they're like, no, we're not going to take that shot. We don't know what's in it. We don't trust those, who's putting them out anymore. But thank God that people are waking up to that.
This kind of reminds me of when you deal with infants or young kids. Remember when you try to teach kids how to like ride a bike or play basketball or something like that, you make it feel like they did it all by themselves. Like, oh boy, you just rode the bike by yourself. Woo!
Little reverse psychology.
Well, that's what's happening. We're giving the public the ability to think, oh, I see all this stuff. I can make a decision now, and it's all my choosing, instead of it instead of other things happening instead.
Well, I think because a lot of people have been so programmed, it's like complacency to even do the research themselves. So that could also be, like you're saying, another way to reprogram.
Exactly.
Reverse monarch programming.
It's kind of like it's kind of like a shepherd dog dealing with sheep. Instead of sending them to the slaughter, you're sending them to an open field.
Well, there's they also have to be. They're trying to find ways to screw people out of the attitude that it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because there's a lot of situations where we put ourselves in and we think, okay, it's sad that this happened to this person, but it's not going to happen to me though, so it'll be fine. So it's making people really, really think twice,
which is good.
That's why they upped the numbers. I think what number were we at again, Alex? I only heard like over 1,000, but that's just me.
1,000 what?
People that were affected, well over 1,000 on the shots, I believe.
I don't actually remember those numbers, to be honest.
Yeah, and I haven't checked any of that.
Yeah.
But going back to Nashville for one quick second.
Right.
It reminds me of a puzzle, another puzzle piece. As we were talking, I remember how like it was either last week or the week prior, I was talking about the Navy and their ships on the coastline. What if this was just another phase of that training?
Good point.
So we have all these cells and all these different operations happening. Meanwhile, we have public viewing of the stuff that's happening with the COVID shots. We're preparing everything externally while at the same time preparing people internally.
Well, did you notice that everything training-wise, it's also being shown on all areas except Space Force? We haven't seen anything that, but there's stuff going on in the waters. There's stuff going on land. and we just had some stuff going on in, the
Air.
air. Yep.
Ah, true.
So
Okay.
that looks to me more like a training, definitely.
Well, and the amount of artillery type things that are being shipped 2 weeks ago, where my son had
Yeah.
seen all those tanks and the heavy military vehicles on the trains.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got to prepare for all particular possible scenarios that will potentially happen after January 6th. Because that's going to be a huge day for a lot of people.
Well, and I'm wondering about the trainings that were going on supposedly around like British Columbia, like Victoria and Nelson, I think were some of the areas that there were a lot of Chinese troops.
Yep. The Chinese actually have authorization by the Canadian government to station troops in Canada, and they seem to be stationed on the United States northern border.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that Boise has some stuff over there too, where the Chinese own land in Idaho, and we're such an open state. You blink, you miss each town you drive by, and it's like literally the closest town to us is about 20 to 30 minutes. So we're all spread out like far.
Well, remember that China also controlled a shipping lane in California as well. I believe it was. I forgot exactly the name of it. But what they used to do over in California when they owned that dock before the American government seized it was there was a lot of trafficking happening over there. What most people don't realize is that when it comes to shipping lanes, besides obviously your normal goods that are going to be coming through, trafficking is very common when it comes to all these shipping containers because you can hide somebody in those things. You can make almost like a small makeshift room for them.
Yeah.
Let alone jamming like 100 of them in as a can of sardines, which is. But I'm less concerned
the amount
about
of deep underground
Unfortunately,
bases that are in the
sardines.
Rockies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. We do have a lot of dumbs out west because of the amount of caverns and caves that are deep in the Rockies. It's actually one of my friends in British Columbia. I won't mention his name here for safety, but he was hiking in Yosemite, I believe. Like the northern, not Yosemite. What's the name of that? It's not Glacier, but it's one of the ones with not Yellowstone. It's in British Columbia over by Victoria, I believe. But I'm trying to remember the name of the state park. It looks like really peaked, like my vocabulary right now. Anyway, the peaks were a lot like the Tetons, which I was like, whoa, what is that? So I'm thinking he said Yosemite, but he showed a picture of the entrance to a dam there that he found. So it makes me wonder how many other dams are around that people just don't notice because there's the forests everywhere and nobody really goes out there because it's out in the wilderness. No wonder a certain agenda wants us to be in smart cities instead of wandering in the wilderness.
I would go even further, not just caves in the wilderness, but what about also with sewer lines?
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the urban area, you can hide within the like, for instance, New York. What happens when it comes to the subway over there is that you have the current subway, and then underneath that one, there's another ladder down. That's the old train station that used to go through New York, but that was eventually covered through and built on top of.
So they showed that in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of cities.
Maybe that was a little disclosure there.
Well, no, if I think about different cities that have built up, for instance, Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, they tore down the old Brooke Army Medical Center and rebuilt. So that, of course, they're digging down in the dump there. And then you think about what's another one? I know that they did a lot of work in New York City with the tunnels. So that's got to be something that's been dug down.
Part of Toronto is completely underground.
Toronto is another one. Chicago's another one. Salt Lake City. Yeah, LA. Salt Lake's another big one because you think of the Olympics.
A lot of paving over.
Yeah. There were years that they were digging. So Atlanta, that's another big one. Denver is another one.
What does Atlanta?
And Denver
what does Atlanta
still
and New York what does Atlanta, New York, and LA have in common? They're all former Olympic sites.
Right. And Salt Lake.
Yep. And what happened in Salt Lake City?
Didn't Denver do one too? I think, didn't
Denver,
they?
I don't believe they did. I think they might have had one or two events there when it came to skiing.
Like
though.
the winter skiing, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And they've got
But-
really steep mountain peaks.
I mean, we talk about Salt Lake City. I think it was 2 summers ago, we had the UN come in.
Oh.
They had like a convention over there. I think it was August 2018, 2017. And here's the funny thing. We had reporters that went in there and they weren't allowed to do their job. They were like, this is a UN zone. But they're like, I'm in America. We have the First Amendment. We're allowed to have freedom of press. But they're like, I'm sorry, but this is a UN controlled area. You're not allowed to do that.
Wow. That's pretty dirty.
And we're
On
talking
our own soil.
and we're talking blue helmets.
Yeah, that's the ones that I've had dreams about, are the blue helmets coming in,
But,
and usually Russian and China. China.
Well, here's I'm less concerned about China than I am about the UK.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we have
Well,
to
'cause
deal
I
with the
think
crown.
Russia is pretty much with the white hats now. I really think that Mr. T
Well-
was able to help Mr. P.
Well, that was the funny thing. I actually was reading something about the 2016 election that had to do with Russia.
Hmm.
And it's not the current narrative that was spouted around by the MSM. What potentially happened, from what I've heard, is they did interfere, but they unrigged the election in 16, not rigged it.
That's cool.
So, remember how the Clinton campaign basically didn't do anything in the Midwest?
Right.
They're like, oh, we got the Midwest, we do all these things, and it's just like Biden, right?
Yeah.
They
thought they had it in the bag.
Well, exactly. So that's what happened. Supposedly Russia or some other white hat outside the United States came in and they unrigged the election. The reason why they needed to allow the rigging to happen now was to allow the sting operation to occur.
Yeah. Which was pretty much what we're doing right now.
It's a, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know how they operate. Insanity is only expecting the same thing to happen twice, having something different happen twice.
Right.
We've been seeing more and more
Unexpected.
videos of them showing how the machines work.
Mm-hmm.
How it can be rigged. Just getting a group of people together and showing them how just simple yes and no. And, if 5 people answer yes and 2 people answer no, and then when he ran it through the machine and it switched it around to where 5 people answered no and only 2 people answered yes. So they were trying to show that it can be switched around very, very easily.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is that people put too much trust into the system, and we've been putting too much trust into absolutely everything and thinking that everything is run by some sort of benevolent force, and not realizing that it's possible that there's cheating done, but people have the attitude, no, it wouldn't be professional cheat. They wouldn't do that. They would get caught or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, exactly. They would get caught, and they did, So
I think now I know there might be a few questions when I said why are we concerned about the UK, and the reason why, and our friends located in the Commonwealth. If you're not familiar with the Commonwealth, that's the reason why. And so, if you're not familiar with the Commonwealth, it's all the countries in the world that still pledge fealty to the crown. All right. So, for instance, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, swears fealty to the Queen. The Prime Minister of Australia swears fealty to the Queen. The Prime Minister of New Zealand does the same thing. Barbados, Jamaica, several other islands in the Caribbean. I would assume maybe some countries in Africa. The sun never set in the British Empire. They just were very sneaky about it.
You know, that actually, for with what you're talking about, the Commonwealth, excuse me, and some other people talking about how like Ontario is wanting to force people to do inoculations to be able to travel, and basically the agenda that we've been talking about for a long time. And Ian had actually sent me, I'll read it. It's actually really amazing. He has a prelude to this letter that was sent in Ontario. So it says this whole plan is happening long before it was supposed to, only moved up to block Mr. T, excuse me, from winning to the election, and a desperation move. Many pieces of the plan are not in place nor ready, but they decided to go ahead anyway because they had no other choice. Thus, in my own opinion, that they had waited, implemented the plan as they originally envisioned, would have had a Brett chance. They're also in denial now, thinking this was rushed and haphazard implementation as the same chance of succeeding. It doesn't. And that was Ian's comment, but this was the letter that he wrote. Is for the citizens of Ontario, from the Ontario's chiefs of police, the police associations, Premier of Ontario, Ministry of Attorney General, Ministry of the Solicitor General, sorry, it's kind of blurry, municipal politicians, public health officials. 21 December 2020 says, I am a police officer and know many other officers that support the following message. After the unfortunate events in Calgary, the time for action is now. And I think they're talking about the kids that were ice hockey playing, and then the cops that went in and were being butts about the face diaper. I have a serious concerns over over Premier Ford's decision to expand further restrictions that put law enforcement officers in an antenna. I'm trying to even see I can't even read the word. It's weird. Untenable situation that must be avoided. Like I said, it's kind of blurry. For 10 months, public officials and bureaucrats have been operating with arbitrary emergency powers that often violate the fundamental freedoms guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And the same for America, of course, with our Constitution. Then he goes on, every Premier Ford mayor, every day, Premier Ford, Mayor Tory, and politically appointed bureaucrats are on television, radio, and in the newspapers, calling on Ontarians to slowly allow all civil liberties to be taken away. What I have seldom seen in any comment by these in positions of law enforcement at the judicial system addressing in the lawfulness of these measures or in the on the grave consequences that they create. I'm calling upon the following stakeholders to immediately meet independently from politicians and bureaucrats: the Ontario Chiefs of Police, police associations, members of the Ministry of the Attorney General, including Crown attorneys, judges, justices of the peace, and constitutional lawyers. Please collaborate and deliver clear and concise direction to the men and women in law enforcement. Until this happens, a moratorium needs to be declared on the enforcement of public health orders by police officers. 10 months has been far too long for this not to have happened. Are police officers supposed to uphold the charter which they have taken an oath to protect, or do municipal bylaws now supersede the Constitution? At the time when the public trust in the police has nearly eroded beyond repair of this paramount importance, the citizens of Ontario deserve transparency from the officials that they have elected, as well as the police that are sworn to serve and protect. This is not an unreasonable request. What happened in Calgary cannot happen again. Never in my life did I think that I would see police officers threatening to taser and arrest kids playing pond hockey. Signed, Police Guard for thee, will you stand? And so Ian had mentioned, the stuff that's going on is not going to work because the pushback everywhere like that. But I also want to extend that to Americans. I mean, look at the courage that these police officers are having in Canada. We need to do that in our own nation, guys. Stand up in our cities and say no more. These face diapers, this is just the beginning of control, telling us how we can take care of our bodies because of something that someone says is scary on the news. all the fear and the garbage
Oh.
that they're doing.
That's the reason why I personally have partnered with a group of people to enact the procedures to recall the New Jersey governor, Philip Murphy.
Awesome.
And he was served on Tuesday
That's
of this
awesome.
week. So the paperwork was filed on the 15th, and it was returned on the 21st, and he was served on the 22nd.
Wow.
He has 7 days now to respond, and he's out of the country.
Oh, really? That doesn't look good at all.
well, it's very similar reasons. He has extended his powers for 10 months. 10 months of emergency powers, which were completely unrightfully gained. This was not a reason to enact emergency powers whatsoever. And also the fact that the legislature has not done anything about this shows that they are complicit within this whole scheme. On top of this, you also have actions in California. There is a recall currently when it comes to Gavin Newsom. They have over 1 million signatures ready to go, and there's even more after that. Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan is currently dealing with impeachment proceedings as well. And I believe there's also things currently happening in Pennsylvania. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there is a movement to try to deal with Tom Wolf as well.
Oh, that makes my
and
heart
I believe
happy.
there's also stuff happening in Oregon. I'm 100%, and I'm not 100% sure about that. But
Yay.
basically, it works very much like a spring, right? You pull back on that spring hard enough, and it's just going to bounce right back at you. And the harder and more forceful you are pulling it back, the more violent the snapback.
Yeah, we're snapping back big time because we're not going to do it. We're not taking this anymore. This is BS.
Yeah, they got really sloppy because this stuff was supposed to happen for many years more. And since now they had to do a rush job, and anybody can tell you if you do a rush job on anything, you're going to get sloppy. You know, you're not going to be able to cover your details very well. You're not going to be able to cover your tracks well. And people are seeing the mistakes that they're making. And, they're making it obvious that.
Which has been awesome.
It's been
I'm so glad.
Been helping with the awakening.
Right.
I think the best and most obvious of these rush jobs is 5G. I think that's probably the most obvious because
that
5G,
the shot.
5G was technically still considered experimental at this point in time. They wasn't supposed to be ready to go until 2025.
Yeah.
So we have this untested, unverified system, which, since it was so dangerous in many parts of the world, including China and including Italy, there was a very fast and concerted effort to suppress that particular thing, and that's where Covfefe came into play.
Right.
Because the Covfefe alloy, which is COFEFEV. No,
yeah, that's like
COVFEV.
carbon. What is Fe? Isn't that like steel or iron or?
It's cobalt, vanadium, and 2 things of iron.
Okay, because I remembered Fe has got to be the iron. Okay, so I remember some of the. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, more heavy metals.
So what happens is when you bind the Covfefe alloy to the 5G towers is that it suppresses the radiation, enhances the range, and also deals with the interference. So
kind
we're
of
going to be
like
dealing
plasma tech in a way. It's what it sounds like. That's cool.
It's a
really
hybridization of deep state and Tesla tech into one concerted off thing.
Yeah, because it's working similar to Kesh technology is what it sounds like. But it sounds like the range goes further because Kesh only goes about 33 feet.
I don't remember what the actual measurements at this point are. A lot of this stuff is still so lock and key. You can only read so far before you get into uncharted waters. You can't until you get like clearance for it, because some of the stuff that we've been able to find is conveniently in the patent office of all places.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, but especially when they put the chips in, if you had chips and combine it with that, what do you think happens?
Well, that was the
question.
idea.
Yeah,
that was the
more
idea.
control.
Well, and the nanite tech that's in the shot, as well as the virus, because it can
as
be
well as in
nano
the air,
activated.
the system, and everything.
Yep,
So if
all the
you are
spraying.
not right, so all of that was connected. They weren't gonna shove the ingredients in our body all at once, because then we would all have a really serious reaction quickly. It would get people to pull back. But if you just put ingredient 1 in, do that for gosh knows how long, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, second ingredient in, and now, like I said, doing a rush job. They're putting the last 2 ingredients in us, whatever it is that they need to do, because the number one thing they want to do is control and depopulate.
Which we all know what happens when what happens when you put 2 reactive chemicals into a beaker and you don't allow enough time to let these things meld properly. Usually what happens is you got a nice catastrophic kaboom.
Yeah, and a new hairdo.
That's why you don't that's why you don't combine things like magnesium with sulfur. It just blows up, or water with any
I'm just hoping that the white hats have helped at least turn it into a stink bomb instead of an atomic bomb, if you know what I mean.
Well, I mean,
let's just make an egg fart instead.
So last thought when it came to Nashville, all right, and this is why I actually think this is a white hat operation, not a black hat operation.
Because CNN barely touched it, but yeah.
Well, not just that, the warning that was given ahead of time.
Right.
No, if this was a deep state operation, they would not have had a warning. They just would have blown it up, and then it would we would just reap the damage. Somebody had to have programmed that particular warning. Now, what's interesting is that warning sounded very professionally made. It was not like a regular speaker and somebody talking over it. It sounded like something you would hear in a police academy. Like they would be able to create it for like a police environment or a fire environment or some type of other first responder type of situation. Because it sounded very much like a regular emergency alert to evacuated area. And I think they went off for
what was it? The Florida Marcus said that if he would have played it, that they would have like shut his video down too. Like anyone that had played it was shutting it down, which to me does also say, yeah, white hats. It seems like anything of truth, they want a shadow ban. God,
they stopped, and
how much time did they say was between the warning and the actual strike?
Well, the full length of the actual tape supposedly was 15 minutes long, but I haven't heard anything that was longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, still, but it could have put it in perspective, 5 minutes. Could you get out of your house and away within 5 minutes? If you're given enough warning, probably could. You probably could within 5 minutes. Just basically throw the clothing you have on here, throw the kids in the car, and just book it. It doesn't matter. You're not dealing with traffic at that point. You are just trying to get out of the blast range at that point. Go across the bridge over by Titan Stadium, and you're out of the blast range.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And another thing that's funny about that is that a lot of the server data that had to do with the elections in Tennessee was in that AT&T building.
That happened to be across the street, on the police station.
So it looks like what was going to happen was that they were trying to destroy the evidence of the election in Nashville. But there was an operation, there was a counter operation to negate any major damage. And so it went off. You win this round, but we know how to stop you now. Know that we can stop you. And don't hesitate that we will not stop you now. It's a shot across the bow. It's we're looking at this is so we've always talked about there was a shadow civil war, a shadow world war, a shadow interstellar war, transdimensional war. This is nothing more than a hint that these things are starting to bubble to the surface. It's no longer going to be clandestine.
Yep.
We're going to now see this more as a covert operation, not a clandestine operation. Now, those sound very similar, but a clandestine means that there's no knowledge of the effect or the parties involved. Covert means that you're going to be able to see the effects, but you're not going to know who's actually doing it. And before you know it, we may go from covert to overt, where we're going to know exactly what's happening, who's doing it, when, where, how,
Which could be good, I guess. Yeah. Just
we're seeing this. We're seeing the settled decloak of the shadow of the silent war in a very controlled fashion.
Oh, some of it is coming out, like the arrest.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 2 arrests.
Awesome.
We've heard 2 alleged arrests.
Which ones now?
Well, we had supposedly Adam Shifty Shift was supposedly arrested in LAX. We've had witnesses who were in LAX saying that he was escorted by 12 Los Angeles police officers outside the building.
I like that.
I'm pretty sure there's got to be at least 50 cameras that recorded that.
Right.
I would assume so, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to. They're not going to allow it to be disclosed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second person, and this was on Christmas Eve, Nancy Pelosi.
Really, I hadn't heard about that one. Where was she?
Supposedly was leaving. I think it was Reagan International, going to California, and Reagan International in DC. She was escorted by U.S. Marshals.
Yes.
Now, you may be asking, why can they do this? Usually they're protected from this stuff. Well, they're currently on Christmas break. They do not have power. They don't have protections when Congress is not in session.
They're not in session. Bam, right on the head.
So they're not
Oh,
protected.
this is so exciting. Oh.
And this also coincides with the acting AG, Jeffrey Rosen, who created a whole memorandum. I think it was a memorandum or an essay dealing with foreign interference with elections. He talked about that whole stuff prior to him taking his position. On top of all that, okay, we're going to even add more to that ice cream sandwich. He has author.
I don't know if you want to use ice cream sandwich as a sample here, dear. They melt if it gets too hot.
Okay, fine. How about
getting hot?
How about a triple?
I'm kidding. I'm just giving you a hard time.
How about a triple decker sandwich?
Dagwood. We'll go with Dagwood. Yeah.
But let's add to that. Acting AG Rosen has authorization to deal with declassified material. On top of John Durham being now a special counsel, which is also allowed to use declassified material, on top of the acting deputy AG, Richard Donahue, who is a former military tribunal magistrate. So all of these players are in place. And you also have the acting defense secretary, Christopher Miller, and acting intelligence division chair head of the DOD, Ezra Cohen-Lawton, where they're dealing with making everything more counterintelligence, counterinsurgency versus invasion or nation building.
That actually kind of thinking about the letter I read a minute ago from Ontario and what they're doing there. I'm wondering, because that's where the other Dominion servers were, right? Over by Toronto or something like that. Some of them.
They were in Toronto. Yep.
Right.
They're based in Toronto.
I'm wondering if the White Hats and Mr. T are working with our beloved neighbors and brothers and sisters over there in Canada, because they've got a pretty stout military. They're tough ass, amazing fuckers. I love their military. Oh my God, they make some of our guys look like wusses. I hate to say it, guys. I love our troops, but Canadian troops are badass. I mean, damn, I'm not messing with them. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're working with the Royal Mounted Police as well.
And the Kraken. Yeah. I'm wondering if that's a big part of the Kraken.
This may be a coordinated white hat international operation.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that. That's spinning a little bit there. So I like this. And I appreciate Ian for chipping in today. He definitely helped us with our show and he didn't even know it.
There's a lot.
We see a lot of pieces coming together. So we see everything is happening at the same time. So there's no way that if all of it's happening at the same time, there's no way you can call it a coincidence.
Well, and even if there was a second wave, which we're going to segue into, look at how much positive support we have, guys. I mean, our East Coast is set hardcore, and I know we've got to have BC helping us up there. I know we have to. There's got to be. I mean, that's our borders. Yeah, we've got a border between us, but this is still our nation, US and Canada. This is our nation, you know, and we're taking it back. So let's talk about the second wave a little bit. I know you wanted to talk about some stuff on that, Alex. Are you still there, bud? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
definitely.
You were just muted.
Yeah, I took a sip of water and I was choking on it for a second.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I hope you're okay.
No, I'm fine. I didn't want to make the sound all melodramatic.
That's what we say. What can you swallow that can swallow you? That's water.
So COVID-19 and supposedly this new mutation, and I think they're calling this the UK strain now.
Okay.
So Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of the UK, recently instituted new lockdown procedures in the United Kingdom.
Oh, aren't they going to be adding 21 instead of 19 to it or something like that too? The name?
I don't think they're calling it 21. I think they're just calling this a mutation of COVID-19 at this moment.
They? Because I was thinking somebody was saying that they were going to add the number 21 instead of 19. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, if they were to call it COVID-21, they would have to be a completely new virus.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's really kind of amusing because when you consider something that Bill Gates said a few years back, he's like, the first one won't be too bad, but the second one will be the one that actually kills people. I think he was saying something around that line.
That's creepy that he does that. And he does it with a grin on his face. Like, this is funny. This is a joke. Let's kill people. Sick bastard.
Well, he went from programming computers to programming people.
Yeah, he just wants to control and psychopath.
Well, that's because we're able to fix computers by banging on it. You can't do that with people.
I wish that would work. And you just bang on somebody and all of a sudden, okay. Now that can be done in multiple different ways. Take your pick.
Well, we're not that kind of show, so
No.
I just meant kicking it, but okay.
Oh, I love it. No, that's funny. I love it. We got to have a little side humor there. We know it. A little kink in our lives.
I mean, he couldn't even handle the viruses in the computer. Now he's going to try to handle the human stuff. Seriously, we're going to trust this guy with it?
Jeez.
Now remember,
I've got just as big of a medical degree as he does. So hey, I should be the expert now, eh?
Oh.
Yes, you even know how to unravel a Band-Aid. Isn't that awesome, Amária?
I know. I'm freaking amazing.
And I think you're ahead of him.
I know that I should scrub it first and do something about that immune system.
Yeah. The best he could do with the face diaper, and I have not seen him wear one yet.
I know. What's up with his face diaperless face?
Well, don't you know? He's exempt from the tyrannical regime.
Oh God, I forgot. Damn, I should have remembered.
Have you guys ever seen the song "Living the Dream" by Five Finger Death Punch?
I think I have actually.
Watch the music video of that.
I'll write that down again.
You know, that's the closest thing. That's the closest thing I've ever seen him wear a face diaper. Is that pie in his face? That's probably the best thing.
I love that.
It's funny that we actually have to deal with the telecom companies and also big tech the way it is because of Microsoft and because of what he did in the 90s. Yeah. Because Section 230 didn't exist until after the breakup of Microsoft as its monopoly.
Well, look how our internet is connected.
I'm almost wondering if he's tied into Jobs' death too. I mean, that's kind of
Jobs. Well, he supposedly died. What was it? Some type of
cancer.
Yeah.
Well, I was hearing that he didn't die of cancer. That he died of a STI. An STD.
Really?
I think he actually had HIV or one of the other diseases, but they called it cancer.
Yeah, because I was thinking it was some sort of a cancer. I'm trying to remember if it was brain
then-
cancer, or kidney, or
And
unless it's another Mandela effect. I mean, shoot, I'm wondering that could be too, huh?
well, that was stuff that was actually well. That's the thing. Apple, in its inception, was there to compete against Microsoft.
Yeah. And he
'cause
doesn't
remember
like
before-
competition, so I wouldn't put him past it killing his
Oh
best
yeah,
buddy.
they
The
have a
computer-
thing for eliminating. So
Yeah,
no,
I
but
remember
elimination
about-
is his thing.
Well, 30 years ago, you remember the computer market was a very different world. You know, you
Yeah.
had Commodore, you had Amiga,
Yeah.
you had the Commodore Amiga, you had the IBM personal PC,
Right.
you had the Windows, Microsoft Windows,
that
you
was
had
crazy.
the Apple
Mhm.
Lisa,
Well,
in the
then people were
Macintosh.
using Linux and Unix systems as well,
Yeah.
with the
Yep.
Pico shell servers, and because that's what
Mhm.
we would use. Shit.
Had you noticed the
And then-
computers back in the older days? You didn't have to be hooked up to the internet to write a paper, get things done. Just a simple,
Yeah.
look at what the date's going to be or whatever. It was just,
Mhm.
everything was run almost similar to a clock system. And
Yeah.
now, if you want to do anything, the minute you turn a brand new computer on, you can't just write a paper without it saying, well, I'm not going to let you bring up that program until you connect to the internet. Why do you need to be connected to the internet just to use a calculator or to
Mhm.
write a simple paper on a notebook thing or, use a Microsoft Word? You have to be connected to the internet. You might
Some
want to
sort of
ask
That's
why.
track.
that's where
Mhm.
open source that's where open source programs come into play, because you can actually use those things natively on the actual hard drive. Oh, that's
cool.
another thing. A lot of things are not even using hard drives anymore. I totally forgot that. They want to use cloud technology.
Oh yeah, the new laptops. That's why I'm trying to figure out what the crap to do, because I need one. But it's like, what do you
Yeah.
get?
Yeah,
My
I got
desktop sits here.
yeah, that's
that's
what
why
I'm
I got a
saying.
laptop.
I mean,
That's why I got a laptop with a 1 terabyte SSD on it,
Yeah,
because at least it's physically on there.
yeah, true.
well, keep in mind, there is no such thing as turning your computer off anymore. If you really want to turn your computer
Right.
off, you actually have to unplug the entire system. A
Unless-
lot of people, including me, I mean, it doesn't help 100%, but I put something over the camera when I'm not
Yeah.
using it, and
You just
stuff.
say-
It's
You
just,
disable,
Well, on your
But
smart
there's
TVs
nothing-
too, it's they cover
yeah.
the camera.
I know
you can
that's why I
disable the
got
network.
That's why I don't own a smart TV. I prefer
Disable the
them dumb.
network. Yeah.
So, but I mean, if you really, really want to disconnect, if you really want your privacy in your home, because there really isn't privacy anymore. If you
have
want
to
it more
unplug,
private,
yeah.
you have to literally unplug the computer from the system.
And
mean,
your
it's a
cell
pain in the
phone
ass,
and
yeah.
everything else.
It's a pain in the ass to reset everything, and you have to unplug the Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, that's the closest you're going to get to your own privacy if that's what you want. I mean, they intentionally did all this so they can keep track of what's going on.
I just notice all the different things that were done completely different 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to now, everything is. Are you guys familiar with the genre known as cyberpunk?
Yeah, a little bit.
And how? Okay, so cyberpunk is basically megalithic corporations are bigger than governments, and it has this major influence in transhumanism. Man and machines merging together. That's what we're that's the deep state's wet dream right there, is that transhumanistic cyberpunk environment.
Yep.
Where they can control everything. Because if you've ever played the game Deus Ex, the third game, which is called Human Revolution, dealt with a point within the end of the game where people are now augmenting themselves, like they're literally cutting limbs off so that they get augmentations. Now these augmentations can be hacked, and so what happens later on in the game, spoiler warning, these operations, so all these people who are augmented were hacked, And so there's a virus running through their systems, causing a massive genocide to occur because of the augmentations being infected with a virus.
Gee, that sure sounds familiar.
Yeah.
What they want to do now is that they want to create this transhumanistic environment right now. But they rushed. And when you rush, you lose.
Yeah.
Thank God they rushed.
Well, we have this wonderful guy who's fantastic at 4D, 5D chess, amongst other people who's with him. And here's the funny thing about that is he can feint a move, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, he's actually doing something, and then they actually do something to counter it when there was nothing there in the first place.
Because he's good at mind games. I love that.
Yeah, he has a thing about getting the bad guys to use the ammunition. And he's been making them, I think they're at the point of depletion right now.
That's why it's so important for people to learn to get into 0 point, that now centered moment. That's what I talk about a lot with people that I teach, because you get somebody in their emotions like the deep state's doing right now, freaking out, getting all up in their shit, and you react. And that's when you, just like you say, you lose every single time. Because when you're in your emotions, you can't think straight, and you're just sabotaging everything. So they're sabotaging themselves, which is awesome.
Exactly.
Love it.
And
Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on or cover before we wrapped up? I know we're pretty much hitting the hour and everything, but is there anything big that you wanted to hit on or wrap up on?
That's pretty much everything. I think that we hit basically everything we needed to hit.
Yeah, it's a little bit on the quiet side because of the holidays and everything, but after the holidays, we're going to have the ball rolling again.
Right. I was hoping that Alex Bloom would be able to jump in. He's been extremely busy with his new lady, which is awesome. We congratulate him. So, he's still on vacation. We'll give him that. But yeah, this has been an amazing discussion. Thank you so much, Alex and Soo, for coming on in and joining HeartMind Expressions with Alex and Soo. And any information you guys out there listening with C4OC Radio Network, Rev Radio Las Vegas, and now the Global Enlightenment Network has also joined us. Thank you so much. Any questions you have, post below. We can ask Denny Ray, Captain Steve-O, and also, there's so many people's names I'm getting. So I'm going to post them all on the bottom. Any questions you guys have, please ask. We love to have feedback. I do thank Michael and Ian for participating, of course, and adding your amazing information. Daryl Neely, that's the one I was thinking about. You can ask Daryl. And of course, again, for all our listeners, we love you. We thank you for listening to HeartMind Expressions, and we will see you guys next time.